Hey TCS TV viewers, it's Dave from the camera store, and today we're talking about the Laowa Argus 35mm f0.95 lens. Hey, we are out on a very windy day here in Calgary as all the leaves have been blown off the trees, but we're talking about the Laowa 35mm f0.95 lens. Now it's very exciting. It's the first 35mm f0.95 lens for a full frame camera. That's pretty cool. Now let's talk about the focal length first. 35mm is a great focal length, and it is definitely my favorite focal length. And the reason I like it so much, for me, it's the perfect perspective for capturing life. As I'm walking around and visualizing scenes, I really love what a 35mm does for me. And having a nice fast 35mm gives me that ability to use depth of field to really draw attention to what I want in that frame. Now, it's not a lens I'm going to be using for portraits. For instance, a head and shoulder portrait lens, I want something with a bit more reach to it. But environmental portraits, people in their workplace and street photography, that's where 35mm really hits the mark for me. Now, I can't wait to talk about this lens a bit more, but let's get into the details and the specs. Now this isn't my first Laowa lens experience, so I wasn't really surprised by the fit and finish and the size and the weight. But if you have not tested the lens like this before, you're gonna be surprised at just how heavy these lenses are. This lens comes in at 755 grams. That's just a little over 1.5 pounds. It's a really dense lens when you pick it up. It's just, you can tell it's just full of glass. There's not much space for anything else. It's all metal construction, including the lens hood here. Now it's a very tiny little lens hood, and it is removable, and you can reverse it for storage, although I don't know why you would. It's so tiny, just leave it on all the time. This lens is available in 3 different mounts: the Sony E mount, the Nikon Z mount, and what we're shooting with today, the Canon RF mount. They are a fully manual lens, and they make the focus ring very smooth, although I do find it a bit on the long side of things. The throw is about 3/4 of the way around, so when you first go from min to maximum, it is a long throw around. You're certainly not doing it with a single hand action. Now, I do like the aperture ring. We have the ability to click and declick it, although I do have a love-hate relationship with this clicks and declick switch. I think they could have made it a little better design. I often found myself hitting it to one direction or the other without knowing it. This lens also features 15 aperture blades. That's a really high aperture blade count when it comes to a lot of more recent lenses. Now, I'm interested to see just how good the bokeh is going to be when I'm using this lens in a bunch of different situations. So this lens has very good fit and finish and some really good build quality, but what's it like to actually shoot with a 0.95 lens? Well, I can guarantee you when you pick up this lens, the first thing you're going to do is put it at 0.95 and go shoot everything with it. And what you're going to find when you look back at your images is that you're like, did I get a bad copy? Are my settings correct in my camera? Because things aren't nearly as nice as you'd like them to be. The reason is at 0.95, the depth of field is incredibly shallow. But that's when the lens is optically at its weakest. If you take a look at these sample shots at f.95, the center sharpness is okay, but the corner sharpness isn't very good at all. And it's lacking a lot of contrast. It has a very dreamy look. Or more creative look, as some people might call it. Once you stop this lens down to 2.8, that's when we see this lens become significantly better. Now, when you're shooting at 0.95, chromatic aberration is definitely there. Take a look at this example here, and you'll see the difference between the light and the dark area. There's a significant amount of chromatic aberration. That green and magenta here you see in front and behind it. Now, you can correct for that in post-production, but with this lens, maybe now's the time to explore those black and white presets in Lightroom. Something I'm really pleased about when I'm using this lens is the out of focus areas. The look I'm getting is very bokeh-licious, some people would call it. What I'm finding is that with its 15 bladed aperture, I'm getting a really nice smooth transition. And even when I'm focusing super close, the out of focus areas look fantastic. It has a very almost dreamy look to it. If you take a look at these examples here, you're gonna see a bunch of different samples shot from 0.95 to 2.8, f4, 5.6. But what's nice is that the out of focus areas are really nice and smooth and creamy. Part of that kind of dreamy look that this lens lens is going to be capable of giving you. However, if you are using this lens for videography, you're going to want to hold back from pulling focus. Take a look at these examples here. This lens is subject to pretty bad focus breathing. If I'm going to use this lens from a videography standpoint, I'm certainly going to use it where I set the focus point and I don't change it for the duration of the shot. So overall, what do I think of this lens? Well, at first I was kind of torn on it. I liked the image quality I was getting out of it for the most part, but I wasn't really happy with the functionality of it. The manual focus takes a little bit to getting used to, and the aperture and the little clicking thing was driving me a bit crazy. But after a period of time, I was starting to get used to that and getting past that. But right now, what I'm finding is that we live in a world where the cameras nowadays are so fantastic and the optics available to us are so amazing. We have sort of the sharpest lenses we've ever seen, the best corrected lenses we've ever seen, but to the point where we're almost losing any kind of character in the lenses. And that's where this lens kind of comes into play. Here's a lens that's not perfect through the entire range, but it has a look and a character that other lenses just don't give you. And I kind of like that. So at first when I started using this lens and figuring out how to get the best results out of it, that's what I was striving for. How do I make this lens the best? I kind of treated it like a 35 f2.8 because that's where I got my best results out of it. But after a while, kind of a strange thing happened. I sort of threw caution to the wind, and instead of going for make it the best I can possibly make it image, just shoot the lens for all the character that it has and embrace that. And that's where I think this lens really shines. If you can take that over and you can just sort of let the lens have the look that it wants, whether it's optically perfect or not, this or that, and don't be that pixel peeper who's striving for every corner sharpness, every middle frame sharpness, all the contrast. Just shoot for what you see in the camera, and I think you're going to really enjoy this lens. It was kind of an interesting experience for me to actually go through that. So I'm enjoying the results I'm getting, even though I know I could probably shoot a different lens that might be sharper in the corners, but I'm not going to give me the same kind of character. So I of course want to know what you guys think of this very unique and interesting lens. Does the 0.95 interest you whatsoever? Does the manual focus side of things throw you off? So make sure you leave comments down below, follow us on Instagram, and please subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll catch you again next time. Oh, oh, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Feel the bird.
Oh yeah.
Feel the bird, Dave.
Woo! This Calgary Tower?
Yeah, that's Calgary Tower.
Okay. Hey, thanks for sticking around and watching this episode. If you want to check out some of our recent content, click the Calgary Tower up here. And if you're a Canadian and you want to shop local, check out thecamstore.com down here.